Right now, as you're watching this, the ground beneath one of Europe's most densely populated regions is rising. Not slowly, not gradually, but at a rate that's breaking scientific records. In the last 30 days alone, over 1,200 earthquakes have shaken the port city of Pozzuoli. Boats that were floating in the harbor last month are now sitting on dry seabed. The waterline has retreated so far that century-old anchors are visible above the surface. And this morning, just before dawn, residents were jolted awake by another swarm of tremors. This isn't a disaster movie. This is Campi Flegrei, and what's happening right now could rewrite everything we thought we knew about volcanic calderas. Let me show you something that will make your spine tingle. The Pozzuoli harbor, one of the busiest ports in southern Italy, is emptying. Not because of a tsunami, not because of a storm, but because the ground beneath it is lifting so fast that the sea is literally being pushed away. Fishermen who've worked these waters for generations are watching their livelihoods vanish as their boats become stranded on exposed rock. The same rocks that were underwater just weeks ago now have seaweed hanging in the air, marking where the tide used to reach. But here's what makes this truly terrifying. This isn't the first time Campi Flegrei has done this. In 1538, the ground rose so violently that it created an entirely new mountain in just 8 days. Monte Nuovo, they called it. New Mountain. It killed 24 people and buried entire villages under volcanic ash. Before that eruption, the same signs appeared. The ground rose, steam vents erupted with boiling water, and then the earth tore open. Right now, at the Solfatara crater in the heart of this caldera, Fumaroles are spewing steam at temperatures reaching 179 degrees Celsius. That's hot enough to melt lead. Just a few kilometers away, at Pisciarelli, another vent is releasing mud and gas at 101 degrees Celsius, with such force that scientists can hear it roaring from hundreds of meters away. The pressure underground is building, and it's not stopping. What's even more alarming is where this is happening. Flegrei isn't some remote volcanic island. It sits directly next to Naples, a city of nearly 3 million people. Another 500,000 live inside the caldera itself, in towns like Pozzuoli, Boccoli, and Quarto. These aren't villages that can be evacuated in an afternoon. We're talking about entire urban centers built on top of one of the most dangerous volcanic systems on Earth. Scientists at Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology have been monitoring this situation around the clock. Their instruments are picking up something they've never seen before at this scale. The ground is rising at a rate of 2 centimeters per month. That might not sound like much, but in geological terms, it's explosive. The last time uplift happened this fast was in the early 1980s, and it triggered an evacuation of 40,000 people. But back then, the ground only rose 1.8 meters total before it stopped. This time, we've already passed 1.2 meters of cumulative uplift since 2005. And it's accelerating. The question everyone's asking is simple, but impossible to answer with certainty. Is this leading to an eruption? The honest answer is, we don't know. What we do know is that every indicator we use to predict volcanic behavior is flashing red. Let me give you the numbers that are keeping volcanologists awake at night. The RIIT monitoring station, positioned at the exact center of maximum uplift near the Solfatara crater, has recorded a vertical displacement of 2.5 centimeters in just the last month. That's not annual movement. That's monthly. To put this in perspective, most volcanoes rise a few millimeters per year when they're restless. Campi Flegrei is doing in weeks what should take years. The earthquake swarms tell an even more disturbing story. In November alone, over 1050 tremors were recorded. Most were small, magnitude 1 to 2, barely noticeable to residents. But the frequency is what matters. These aren't random quakes. They're clustering in a specific pattern, creating what seismologists call a seismic ladder. Each cluster sits slightly deeper than the last, tracing a path from 3 kilometers underground up toward the surface. What's causing this? Deep beneath Pozzuoli, roughly 3 to 5 kilometers down, there's a massive chamber of superheated fluids and gases. Think of it as a pressure cooker buried under a city. As magma releases water vapor, carbon dioxide, and sulfur compounds, these gases rise through fractured rock. The rock above, what geologists call the cap rock, is being forced upward by this relentless pressure. But here's what should terrify you. It is the Temple of Serapide, an ancient Roman marketplace that's been used for centuries as a natural tide gauge, is now completely dry. For the first time in decades, there's no standing water inside the structure. Tourists used to wade through ankle-deep seawater to explore the ruins. Today, you can walk across bone-dry marble. The sea hasn't receded because of drought. Walk through Pozzuoli's old town today, and you'll see something that looks like a war zone, except there was no war. Cracks run up the sides of centuries-old buildings. Some are thin, hairline fractured. Others are wide enough to fit your hand inside. Shopkeepers have posted signs warning customers to watch for falling plaster. One family showed their kitchen wall to local news cameras. Schools in the red zone have started conducting monthly earthquake drills. Children as young as 6 are being taught to drop, cover, and hold. Parents are packing emergency bags with water first aid supplies and copies of important documents. This isn't paranoia. This is survival planning in a place where the next major quake could happen tonight, next week, or not at all. Now let's talk about what's actually happening beneath your feet if you're in this caldera. Imagine a network of fractures, like spiderweb, cracks in glass, spreading through solid rock 3 to 5 kilometers underground. These aren't empty voids. They're pathways for superheated fluids, steam, and volcanic gases to migrate upward. Every time pressure builds in one fracture, it forces open another. That's why the earthquakes keep climbing closer to the surface. The Italian government has Campi Flegrei classified at yellow alert, which sounds reassuring until you understand what that actually means. Yellow doesn't mean safe. It means above background levels with potential for escalation. The problem is, yellow alert has been active for years. Residents have become numb to it. When alerts stay the same while the ground keeps rising, people stop taking them seriously. In 2023, officials conducted a large-scale evacuation drill. It was chaos. Traffic jammed the narrow coastal roads within minutes. Families couldn't find their designated meeting points. Communication systems failed under load. The drill exposed a terrifying truth. If a real emergency happens suddenly, tens of thousands of people could be trapped. Here's what makes this even more complicated. Campi Flegrei doesn't follow a predictable pattern. The 1982 crisis saw massive uplift and thousands of quakes, then nothing, no eruption. The land eventually subsided. People moved back. But scientists can't promise that'll happen again. This caldera has erupted violently before, and every geological survey confirms it will erupt again. The question isn't if, it's when. So here's what I need to know from you, and be brutally honest in the comments. Do you think the Italian government is doing enough to prepare these communities? Or are they waiting for a disaster to force action? Drop your answer below because this affects real lives right now. Let me give you the threshold. Scientists are watching right now, because these numbers could determine whether 500,000 people need to evacuate. If monthly uplift exceeds 3 centimeters for 3 consecutive months, that's a critical trigger. We're currently at 2.5 centimeters per month and climbing. If earthquake frequency surpasses 1,500 tremors in a single month with magnitudes consistently above 3.0, that signals fracture propagation is accelerating toward the surface. We hit 1050 last month. If fumarole temperatures at Solfatara exceed 200 degrees Celsius, it means the hydrothermal system is destabilizing rapidly. Right now, we're at 179 degrees and rising. So what should you do if you live anywhere near this caldera? Or if you're planning to visit Naples? First, prepare an emergency kit today. Not tomorrow, today. Pack water for 3 days, non-perishable food, flashlight, battery-powered radio, first aid supplies, copies of identification documents, and cash. Keep it by your door. Second, identify at least 2 evacuation routes from your home that don't rely on the main coastal highway. But here's the reality nobody wants to say out loud. If you're in the red zone and you have the means to relocate temporarily, consider doing it now. Not out of panic, but out of prudence. The window between first warning and full eruption in 1538 was 8 days. 8 days to get 500,000 people out is nearly impossible with modern infrastructure. Imagine it with 16th century roads. This isn't about fear-mongering. This is about respecting a geological system that has killed thousands throughout history and will do so again if we're not prepared. Campi Flegrei is not a question of if, but when. Every scientist studying this caldera agrees on that single point. The ground is rising, but the earthquakes are intensifying. The gases are venting at temperatures that melt metal, and the people living on top of it are waiting for someone to tell them what to do. So here's my final question, and I really want your honest answer in the comments. If scientists said there's a 30% chance of eruption in the next 5 years, would that be enough for you to move your family out of the danger zone? Or would you wait for higher odds? Tell me your threshold, because understanding how people make these decisions could actually save lives. If this video made you realize how serious this situation is, hit that subscribe button right now. We're tracking Campi Flegrei every single day with updates you won't find anywhere else.